BIC sailors believe that in order to do an effective job of repair on the BIC, you need to know what's inside. Therefore, the first 5 minutes of this video will be devoted to the deconstruction of the BIC hull. Let's get started. Well, today, the BIC boys, we're going to cut up one of these open BIC skiffs. Now I'm going to be starting at the stern of the boat, and I'm going to just slice it crossways from gunnel to gunnel, and then I'm going to show you what's on the inside of this. So the way I'm going to cut this up is with a Sawzall. It's a battery powered. Mine happens to be from Home Depot, and I've got a demo blade on here that's about 8 inches long. So I'm not going to show you me sawing it because that would take too long. Well, I cut it off and laid it up on top here. So this top section, and you can see back in here, it's actually some plywood in a T sort of shape. And that plywood is where they, all of the pintles and other paraphernalia come to the back of the boat. And that provides all the strength. I'll back away and you can take a look here at the boat. Well, this still was taken looking straight down on the stern of the boat, and you can see the plywood and where it actually rests. Okay, so I took the piece of plywood, this whole bracket out of the stern of the boat, and you can see by looking at it, it's delaminating. And you know, I'm sure it's a high quality plywood, but why you'd ever put plywood purposely in a marine environment without having it completely coated, I don't know. Anyway, there it is. That's what holds together the all the pintles and the rudder system on the boat. Well, I moved forward about another 2 feet, made another cross-sectional cut here, and now you can see there's some foam in here, some sort of structural foam. Sit. Anyway, I'm going to move forward and make another cut, see what's further up. All right, well, I've cut this off, and I can see here now that there's some structure back here, more plywood that surrounds the black plastic receiver for the dagger board. So I'm going to take a little different tack on this cut. I'm going to start up further and up in here, cut down along the side to expose this to show what's in this receiver. Well, these 3 photographs show what this plywood looks like running up the inside here. This provides a place for them to put screws in for the black plastic dagger board receiver. I made another cut further up towards the bow, and reveals this hollow cylinder. It's where the step for the mast, and it's been hot melted into place. And in front of it, and then so on the bottom of the boat, you can see this bumper assembly that they put on here, protect the bow of the boat as it runs into rocks and other similar items. All in all, these boats are remarkably resilient. I mean, these have been run into rocks, run over other boats, and considering it's 12 to 14 years old, it's quite an amazing feat. Well, that pretty much does it for the disassembly of the BIC. So thanks for watching. Well, this is a little addendum to my last video. I had to cut up a second hull too, since I'm heading off to the dump with this stuff. And by the way, although this plastic would be recyclable, here on Maui, there's nowhere to take it. But this is the marine plywood. You can see by looking at it, it's completely delaminated, and this is why you don't use any kind of plywood that's really not protected in a marine environment. Let's get started with the repairs to the BIC Open Skiff hull. On today is what used to be called the Open BIC. Now it's called the Open Skiff. This one is an older model, probably one of the originals, and it's 10, 12 years old. Belongs to the Lahaina Yacht Club, and we were going to trash it, and I said, well, let me have an opportunity to take a look at it and see what's going on. You can see by looking at this area right here where the rudder normally mounts, the pintles have already been removed, that it is cracked across the top right here. And right across here. You can see this crack running across here. And, that is a result of the process that they used to actually make these boats. They use what's called a blow mold. And blow mold has some issues in that it can have some real thin areas. This is an example of that. And if you look straight down on it, you can see the material there is really, really thin. If you compare that to, like my screwdriver blade right here, there's not a lot of difference in that. And that thin spot gets very weak and eventually cracks like it did. So what I've tried is several different products to see if I can make some repairs to this. The first thing actually you need to notice is that inside of this piece right here is a T-shaped piece of plywood. Well, here's what it looks like if you were to open it up. Now, of course, I'd say they never should have used plywood inside this because it's going to get wet in there because these things will leak somewhat eventually. But this plywood is delaminating right here. You can see the pieces coming off, and that's one of the reasons. And once the plywood loses its strength, then the whole thing starts to come apart. But I'm going to try and do some repair. Now, initially, I did try a couple things. I tried a couple of different epoxies. One of them, you can see here, JB Weld, quick setting epoxy. It doesn't work. The other one, Polytap, which I had a special order to even get it here. It basically didn't work either, and I did follow their instructions on heat treating the surface before I tried it. And so basically neither one of them worked. I've never found anything that will stick to this. I've been told that these hulls are made of polyethylene, same product they use for making the plastic milk jugs, and absolutely nothing sticks to this stuff. Really noticed is if you're looking straight down on this, this right at this point in the center is in the mold, steps in, and that's good because that's where the screws go to hold the pintles, to hold the rudder in place. But then it steps back out right here, and there's no strength at this point on these. And that's on both sides. So the first thing I'm going to do is make an insert of some kind of plastic, and I already know what I'm going to do because I've done this once, and slide it down inside this and glue it into place, because now it'll glue. It won't glue to the plastic, but it will glue to the wood inside there, and that'll help strengthen the whole back of this boat. Well, these strips that you see here that I use for making the repair on the stern of the BIC were originally a cutting board. They're about 3/4 of an inch wide and about 5 inches long, and it's about an 1/8 inch thick. And it appears that it's made of the same material as the BIC, some sort of a polyethylene. I've glued these two strips that I had into place, and I put a couple of screws in the top holes where the upper pintle would be, just to pull it back in and for that to dry. Now what I used on this for an adhesive is this JB Weld plastic, and it's a 5-minute epoxy. And I used the 5-minute because I don't want to wait till tomorrow to have to work on this. Okay, another repair that I have to make is this is once again the stern of the boat. I've already put the plastic in. It's currently drying, and right down here, this spot where you see these 3 little triangle holes, anybody who's looked at these at all, this is where a latch gets screwed into that holds the rudder in place so it doesn't fall out as the boat is being sailed. Now the problem with this, not only these latches break, but if you see right at the top up here, there's a little black line. That's actually a crack. And that crack occurs, and sometimes you'll actually see those on these that come out from this and go up both sides, over here and there. And what occurs is that during the molding process, you can see how that piece sticks out where that is screwed into. There's nothing behind it until you get to the wood. And so when you put a screw in there and you tighten it down, what happens is it pulls on that plastic and eventually cracks it because it's pretty thin. So what I do is I'm going to fill those holes, all three of them, with, I'll probably enlarge the hole a little bit because these actually go back into the plywood behind here. But I'll enlarge the holes and I'll fill all those holes. I'll squirt silicone cement in there. And although it won't really stick to the plastic, it will fill the holes and dry up in there and give it a little more substance, something to be pushed back against. And hopefully that'll stop that cracking. Okay, well, so the epoxy has dried. It's been 24 hours on this. Didn't really have to wait that long, but I got busy. And I'm going to cut this excess. You can see it sticking out there about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I'm going to cut that off just with a hacksaw. And it doesn't have to be anything pretty. Doesn't have to follow any contours, because the next step is actually going to be hot melting this whole system back together. So if it's got a little excess, that's good, because then it will melt back in even better. Okay, you can see I did cut these off with a hacksaw. The next step, I'm going to get out my the iron and the soldering iron that I bought that's made just for doing this type of work, and I'll show you what that's all about. Okay, so this is the plastic welding repair kit, which includes that iron you can see, that I bought from Amazon. You can look it up. It seems to work pretty well. Here's the actual iron. You can see the head of it has this kind of a shovel look to it, and it's fairly large. That head's about 3/4 of an inch both directions. I think it's 85 watts. It does fine at melting what we're doing. So along with purchasing the welder, they call it, a welding iron for plastic, I also bought from Amazon this brand here. Don't ask me how to pronounce it, but it came with 6 different types of plastic welding rod, 1/8 inch welding rod. And you can see it in here. And like I said before, there were 3 of them, these 3 right here, that actually seem to work pretty well. The rest of them did not stick to anything. Okay, well, the iron is hot here, and I'm going to start doing, they call it welding. But basically, you know, you're melting this down. You've got to get not only the new material melted down, it's got to melt into the existing material. And that's where you have to be careful with this, because this is so thin, if you stay on it too long, you can end up melting a new hole in it, causing yourself even more trouble. All right, that one side looks pretty good. By the way, do this outside where you have a lot of airflow, because this stuff stinks when it's melting, and I'm sure it's not good to breathe. Okay, now that I've got those 2 done, that was what I'd say the easy part. Now I've got one of the pieces of this material, and this one is called, it's TPO, TEO, TPE, whatever all those stand for. But anyway, it's the one I like. It matches the best. And here we go. We're going to try and melt this right into here. Yeah, looks like I need a little more. Let it cool down. Well, it's been a few days. I've had some other things to do, but so today I'm going to finish putting this boat back together. First thing I'm going to do is, wherever I'm going to put a screw now, I'm going to put some silicone sealant in all the holes. So we're going to get started here. Try and squirt some in. Here, now I can continue. Like I said, this goes in anywhere I'm going to put this. Now once again, this silicone will not actually stick to this very well, but it will clog up the holes, and when I put the screws in, it'll seal around the screws. So that's the important part, and it will make this hole more watertight. Well, it's been about 4 hours since I filled all the holes with sealant and put all the screws back in this hull. And the last step on this is actually to test it. And the way I test this is with I have a handy dandy compressor, and it's got a tip on it, a blow tip, and I've run it down to about 5 psi maximum on this blow tip. And I put some tape around the tip to make it actually, when I can insert it here into the drain hole, and then I can put air inside of the hull, pump it up to about 5 psi or so. Now you can also do this with some sort of a low pressure filler, like you would use a pump, like a bicycle pump, but one you'd use for filling large rafts and that kind of thing. You'd have to somehow manage to make something that would go into this. Anyway, after you get some air inside this, if you put too much, by the way, you could literally pop this boat. But once you get air into it, then you use someone with good hearing, and they need to go around to where all the screws are on the back of this and every other place that there are screws on the top side of the hull, and listen for air escaping. It's real easy to hear it. It has a definite, sound as it comes out. And I've already done that to this, and it seems pretty well sealed. So I'm pretty happy with the results. This is my this is the second of these boats that I've done, and this took me about 2 hours to get through this one. I've done a third one since this, and I did it in 30 minutes. So I'm getting better at it, and I think that this is probably a good fix. It's not going to last forever, but I figure these boats are probably good for another 2 years or so. Hey, and at $4,000 a boat, if I can make it run another 2 years, amortize that out, that's a pretty good deal. Anyway, that's it. All right, this morning we're going to do another repair. It's pretty common on these after the boats get older, and that is that the pinsels, and it's usually the upper pinsel, it gets loose, and if you see, I could tighten this, it just is spinning out. So what that means is that the plywood back behind this has, probably starting to delaminate. It's certainly coming apart. So we're going to make a repair. Now this other side actually tightens up pretty good, but so I'm just going to do the one side, and so I'll do is go ahead and first remove the pinsel, and go from there. All right, so today the way I'm going to do this repair is first thing I'm going to do is drill the hole out a little larger, and I'm going to insert this drywall. It's a plastic drywall anchor. Now it's actually made out of nylon, and it takes a number 8 screw in here, which I have several of with me. So I'm going to first drill the hole out. All right, here we go. And if you look at the drill, you can tell the color of the wood that's coming out, because that's actually the plywood, and how it is wet and dark, and that is not a good sign. It means that plywood behind there is certainly deteriorated. In the past, we've actually tried doing some repairs like this instead, just by using a larger screw. And if you tried to put a larger screw into this stuff, you can see on the drill again, it would never stick. So that's why we're going to try the drywall anchor. And actually I've done the drywall anchor on other boats, and it seems to be holding pretty well. Part of this is, now that I've drilled the hole out, I'm going to fill this hole with silicone adhesive sealant. While I'm at it, I'm going to do the other side just to squirt some in there. All right, that pulled that in real nice. And that's pretty much the end of the repair. After this, we just have to put the pencil back on. I'll go ahead and put a little bit more silicone in the hole just to try and keep any water intrusion out of there. All right, what I've got here is a number 8 screw, which is what's designed to go into this drywall anchor. And the other thing is I had to get some stainless steel screws. They want to be at least 1.25 inches long. They can actually be longer, 1.5 inches, even 2 inches. Here we go. Okay, I'll just snug it down, and then I'm going to put in the screw that came out of the other side. All right, it's pulling down nice and snug. Retighten the other side. Okay, well, we'll see how long it lasts. Now this repair also can be used around the dagger board box. Sometimes those screws get pulled out, and they're getting pulled out for the same reason. If you go earlier in this video where the disassembly of these hulls, and you saw that the dagger board screws all go into the same kind of plywood that we're going into right here, and therein lies the problem, because that plywood starts to disintegrate. So it will make it last a little bit longer anyway. In our case, we have 17 boats here. We have 16 students, so all the hulls need to be available to go into the water at any time. So even if these don't last long, they'll certainly last through another season, which is what's important for us. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please remember, if you like what you've seen on this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. Aloha and a hui ho.